spending the afternoon with us, or part of it. I'm Usha, and that's Kai. We work here at the library. This program was coordinated in partnership with the community builders, many of whom are here today. If you're interested in what we do, please pick up a flyer. And there are also lots of information on the organizations here today. So before you leave, please be sure to look at the tables around the room. Today we have a very skilled and informative panel represented by CISD, Metrocrest, Assistance League of Coppell, and Christian Community Action. Members of these different organizations will educate us in what they do and the ways in which the community can assist. There'll be time for questions and discussions at the end of the session. Please take a moment before leaving to give us some feedback by filling out a brief survey. A special thanks to the students of KCBY, the media group at CHS, for volunteering to record the event. First up on our list of panelists is Jennifer Vilnius, who is the Director of Student and Staff Services at CISD.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. We feel like this is a topic that sometimes is overlooked in our community, and we jumped at the opportunity when the community builders contacted us so that we could provide some information so that we can provide that education to the community in regards to how we're supporting students who are what we call McKinney-Vento from the McKinney-Vento Act, which qualify as homeless students. And our students, as you know, in Coppell ISD, it's not just the city of Coppell. We also encompass more than just the city of Coppell, but in our district, in both the city of Coppell, and the city of Irving, and the city of Dallas, we have students that are homeless. So Kai's gonna run our slides for us. Just a background, my name is Jennifer Vilnius, and I'm a former teacher, assistant principal, and I've been in my current role for 5 years here in Coppell. However, I was Director of Student Staff Services in another district, a larger district in the Fort Worth area for 4 years prior to coming to Coppell.
Hi, and I'm Annalise Ford, and I work in the capacity of district-wide. I work with all the campuses. My main office is out of the high school, where I work with a lot of the high school students who are McKinney-Vento or homeless, as we're more familiar. But my background is I was a former teacher, and I also was an assistant principal, and currently have been in Coppell for 10 years, and prior to that I was in a different district as well for 16 years. But this year, working in truancy, residency, and homelessness as well.
A little bit about our department. We are small but mighty. We cover various student services and staff services when it comes to the processes of Chapter 37, which is discipline, looking at any investigations, helping support campus principals and assistant principals. Our department covers that. Also, legal support for the district, new policies. So right now we're in a legislative session, and there will be many things that come out of this session, and they have to be implemented in school districts at the local level. And so our department also helps with that process. Coordinated health services. We are blessed in Coppell because we have a registered nurse at every single campus. Not every school district does. They have RNs and LVNs, but we in Coppell have been working towards that over the last 5 years to have RNs at every single campus, and we have 18 campuses, and we have an RN at every campus, and we oversee that process. Also, homelessness and foster students. We are the liaisons for those students for support. And then attendance and truancy mostly lives here with Ms. Ford. But a lot of times there's patterns between both because of the fact that there's some mobility and also some additional, just some additional needs that our students that are going through some extra challenges need. And so this is how our department supports all of these areas.
Yeah, so working in truancy seems like an odd connection to our homeless students, but in talking to students, one of the things with truancy is we're not just like, hey, let's shove you on down to the courts and let them take care of it. It's about trying to make an intervention plan for them. So they have several levels of intervention, and when they get to me, it's kind of like we're in our final levels of intervention. And at that time, I find the students have become very comfortable in just talking about what their situation is. And so we've discovered a lot of homeless situations in the high school that may not have been shared otherwise. Like we had an unaccompanied minor whose parents had something occur where they went back to their country and were not able to come back, and so he was living on his own with his 19-year-old brother who was paying the bills and providing the house and doing those things. And so through my conversations with him about why aren't you in school, came to fruition of, well, there's other things going on in my life and this is what it is. And so those conversations are more frequent than I would have anticipated coming into this job. But so some of the things that we do want to do for our homeless kids is we want them to be consistent. We want to give them as much consistency as possible. So if they move to another home, we want school to be their safe place. You are always going to have this place. You are going to come. So if they move, that's a place that's too far for them to walk, or their parents have lost transportation, or they have no transportation from parents, we will provide transportation for those students. And so that can look like, it can look like a bus service or a car service. If they happen to move to another city, then we work with that other city to have them pay for one leg of the transportation and we pay for the other leg of the transportation. And same thing if we have some Coppell kids that move here and they want to stay in another school district, we will pay for that leg of transportation for them, just to give them the stability of your home is your safe space, your school is your safe space, and we want you to have that consistency. We provide free lunch and breakfast for those kids as well, so they always know that they're going to have a meal when they're at the campus. And then CHS has a food pantry that they've created, and they call that for students who have food inequities. And so if the student is homeless, they have access to those, but even if the family is in a temporary situation and they need help, they have a food inequity, we're going to make sure that food is delivered to your house. And so sometimes the kids will even take a backpack to and from school, taking food from the food pantry so that they have food. Clothing is provided seasonally. So, our Texas weather, you can never really predict it. And all of a sudden they need winter clothes. And they realize that they have outgrown those winter clothes, not just our elementary kids when they pull out those pants and they're to their knees. Our high school students are still growing too. And so we have a lot of partnerships with our community members, and they will provide clothing for our students. They just ask us for the sizes, and then they go to work getting those clothes for those students, and then we provide them in my office. They come in at different times. They can leave them there, come get them after school. If they're embarrassed to take them, we will make sure that those clothes get to them, because we don't want to put them feeling odd. But most of them don't care. They are so happy to have those clothes, they're stuffing them in their backpacks. We also provide emotional support. We have a lot of services that we can branch out to with our community services, who can help them with counseling or get them set up with things like that. But in the district also, we make sure that their campus counselor is aware of their situation. And then we have crisis counselors who work for the district and can come and be another layer of support, because we want to make sure that they have that adult that they can get help from, because they are teenagers or younger and they need someone that they can rely on. We connect family with other resources, and so that can be provided by, again, our community partners who we rely very heavily upon. They will do rent assistance if needed. They can provide them with gas cards. They can provide them with all sorts of things that are needed and that they show a need for. There was even a community mechanic in the neighborhood when the mom her only job was to be an Uber or Lyft driver, and her flat tire, and she couldn't afford a new tire, and so a community donation of a tire for her so she could get back to work and provide for what she was providing for her family. We want to make sure students are safe, and that's, again, having that trusted adult in their life. But our most important thing is we want to break the cycle of homelessness and poverty. And so we work on connecting with counselors and jobs and filling out college applications and waiving those college fees and paying for exams and things like that, so they can break the cycle and get out of that cycle.
It's so important that we look at community partners for those wraparound services, not only for the student, but for the families, in order to break those cycles. Homelessness doesn't really have a zip code. We experience varying numbers of students that are experiencing homelessness throughout the year. This is a highly mobile population. This year, our numbers have gotten as high as 70 students. Now remember, our total population is 13,400 students, give or take a few, depending on enrollment and withdrawals. But you know, having upwards of 70 students, that's a lot of students to really work with. We actually conduct one-on-one interviews with the parents when the students come in. We try to connect with the student, also have the counselors at each campus, because we have 18 campuses, check in with those students as well. Not just seasonally, but we also know that there are different cycles when it comes to seasons, when it comes to upcoming events. Are we gonna have different events that require supply fees, or are there exams coming up that require fees? And making sure that we're able to supplement for those students so that they don't look different, and so that they can be kids and experience a positive school environment. So some of our students' situations may look like they're staying within a hotel, and our school zone actually has a significant amount of hotels. And so we, being near the airport, actually get a lot of students that live in the hotels. As prices fluctuate with those hotels, they may jump to another hotel. And so we've seen trends in that way this year, whereas last year, they were pretty stable within a hotel. They would be there from start to finish. But this year, we've seen a little different. We'll go over trends here in a couple more slides. But also, if they're living in a shelter, we have several families that have come in and they are being supported by shelters. We don't have any shelters in the city of Coppell, but we do in surrounding areas. So those students may have been Coppell students where their school of origin, and if there happened to be domestic violence, for instance, and they're in a shelter, then we would make sure that those students are stable and still able to come to our schools, as Ms. Ford said. Doubled up and even tripled up with family members or friends. We see that even more so this year. Unsheltered, some of our older students, we've had students that we found were sleeping in Andy Brown Park. You know, trying to figure out couch surfing is also something that our teens do, and just sometimes they're a little proud, or they don't want to get in trouble, so they don't want someone in the school to know that they don't live at home. They also, in some cases, don't want to get their parent in trouble. So having those connections, our teachers are making relationships is one of our core values in Coppell, and so we try to ensure that you can reach out to us and we will assist you and support you. But it has been key having those relationships with our students to determine what their needs are, because they don't always tell you. And then additionally, if there's a natural disaster, we also have students that have come in from Ukraine and El Salvador as refugees. And so we have refugees as well that we're supporting in the district.
So I always jump ahead on my slides, and I've already said some of these things on here that we provide for the kids. But one of the things I didn't mention was school supplies. We make sure that they have everything that they need. For the younger students, oftentimes we like to use 2 sets of school supplies, and younger also inclusive of middle school, depending on how you define younger. But if they need 2 sets of school supplies because they don't have crayons or pencils at home, we're going to give you 2 backpacks filled with 2 sets, one that you get to take to school and one that you have to keep at home, so that you don't have to worry about that in there. And then also, someone had asked once, why 2 backpacks? Well, sometimes those backpacks are what they shove their extra things in when they're moving from place to place, and so they can always use an extra bag to pack what little things that they have. Clothing and shoes. We also do gift cards for students and parents, and some of those gift cards are grocery gift cards, gas gift cards, so that they can get to and from places. And for our teenagers, sometimes the normalcy of them being able to pay for their own things at Sonic and Starbucks, or if they want to just be a kid and not have to worry about, I'm going to order water while everyone else gets their own thing, we've provided them gift cards that have been donated to us. So those are come from community members also, and we hand those out. And I get the joy of passing those out and saying this was donated for you, and it really lights up a face for them to be able to just have their own little money to do whatever they want with. And so thank you guys too. I see some of you out here who have donated those gift cards. During the holiday times, we make sure that they have meals and that they have gifts. We will do a tree for families so that we can provide them the holiday, you know, what is it that you want? And a lot of times those are clothing needs too. I'm always surprised at the things that they don't ask for. And so we provide that, and then we also want to give them some of those nicer things too, so that they can have those. Art athletic fee donations. One kid I was talking to, he's like, I just need an art drawing book for my high school class. I was like, you don't need anything else? He's like, no, I just can't afford the art drawing book. And so we had him one in, I think, 10 minutes. We got him that. Summer support, making sure they're taken care of the summer and what their needs are during the summer. In our district also, they have the free lunch and breakfast where the kids can still get those supports during the summer when they're not here. So we have summer school that's going on, and they can go to those campuses too. And then, like we've said, housing we've provided. Sometimes there's domestic abuse, and the family is fleeing, and so they need immediate shelter, and we work with our community partners and donations to get them into a safe space until they can get into the shelter, because sometimes those shelters are full.
So some of the trends, as we discussed previously, students are enrolling a little bit later. So when school starts in August, our numbers are smaller. In fact, this year, I think we started out with 7 students, which in the 5 years I've been in Coppell, we've never had, you know, less than 20 students. So I remember walking into my supervisor's office and saying, you know, we switched enrollment processes, and I'm wondering if there's a flaw in the system, but I don't think my data is correct. Well, it was correct. Our students came after Labor Day. So, you know, making sure that they are where they need to be. Also, we do kind of an audit at the end of the school year, and we reach out to those families again and talk about, okay, what are you going to need over the summer? Because we want to make sure that a lot of times those students are staying home, and sometimes it's in a hotel, or sometimes it's double or tripled up. We also want to make sure that they have any resources that they need in order to maintain a safe place for that child. So we talk with them at the end of the year, and we also say, do you plan to come back? And then we reach out again in July just to check on them. If we haven't had needs through that whole entire time. A lot of times some of our families will go to different areas, even out of the state during the summer, or send their children with grandparents. And so that happens a lot, but there are times when we need the support to keep going, and we can't do that without our community partners. I know Assistance League helped us last summer with providing gas cards and grocery cards to families, and it really made a difference, especially when the economy is kind of out of sorts and the price of groceries are, you know, escalating, and gas prices are escalating. Then it has really helped our families. We also see our homeless numbers increasing when economies are struggling. And students are in and out of those multiple hotels and multiple living arrangements. And that can be a challenge for us as a district, because when we're trying to send a car to pick a child up, which is a car service, not us driving our cars, but also a bus. And then when they move, in order to try to get them and keep them in school without a lag, it can take us 3 to 5 days to establish, you know, a new bus route to a new location. And so we've had that a lot this year. And so I think it's been a challenge for us and for our department in order to try to keep those students from missing school because of the high mobility rate. And that there is that, just in general, the high mobility rate. Sometimes we have students that are, I guess, fluid with the system, meaning that they may go and try to stay with another parent or a grandparent, but they end up coming back to us. And so there are students that we may have had before, which is good because we keep a profile on them and we can support them where they are when they come back to us.
So you've heard me say a couple of times through our community partnerships, and so that's what where we get a lot of help is from that. So your help does matter to us. This year, y'all, I need glasses. There's so many of you with glasses on there, so you're not gonna pair that to pick up on paper. Okay, so summer donations alone assisted over 35 students with meals and gas. School supplies and backpacks were gifted to every student in need. The fall coat and winter clothing drive assisted 60 students. Sonic One meal gift cards to Starbucks and Sonic and Walmart cards were given to over 60 students. And our current partnerships include Metrocrest, Coppell Allies, Coppell Assistance League, Coppell Cares, Lions Club, Catholic Charities, individual community members, and Lineage. So, and there's probably some that we have left off there, but we rely on the community to help these students and families to have just a little bit of evening the playing field.
And I will say we've even had donations from bunco groups come in and say, you know, we have a connection with another community member or organization that's worked with your students and we'd like to help too. And I just can't tell you how amazing that is, especially because it always seems to come when we have the most needs. So there are times when we have a situation with a student or a family or multiple families and we're thinking, how are we going to support them? Let's reach out, and then someone comes through our door, and that has happened numerous times, and we just think that there are so many angels in our community, and we are so thankful to you. And I just can't express how amazing that has been for our students. They are so grateful. You know, a lot of times they have tears of worry and sadness, but when they get those donations, whether it's a coat or a pair of socks or a backpack, it's tears of joy. And that's part of what makes our job so meaningful too, is to allow that pipeline of those resources so that the students can, you know, have a sense of normalcy in school. So how can you help? How can you continue to help? We have, Andrea has created, now in Coppell, we cannot create a gifting list or an Amazon list ourselves, but other individuals and organizations can on our behalf. And so this is our spring list. The QR code is a spring list of sizes and items that we need for students this spring. And this should carry us into the summer. But if you would like to donate, that's one way you can donate, by picking an item and bringing it to the administration building, or Andrea's information is also, and Andrea, you want to wave? And so, additionally, you can check in with our department. Katrina Owen is my assistant, and Annalise and I speak with her daily, and she kind of has a hub of what's needed, because when parents are in need or panicking, they're going to call our department, and she's the first line. So she can let you know if there's a specific need, if there's something that week or that month or something coming up. And additionally, I've listed out different opportunities. In June, that's when we start collecting school supplies. So if you're out and you see the school supplies coming, then feel free to pick up a few things. Anything and everything is welcome, but if you want specifics, you can call, and Katrina or Annalise or myself can help you navigate what supplies are most popular with our kids. And also lunch boxes. A lot of times we can send food home with students in lunch boxes. So those are handy, as well as the backpacks. And then you can adopt an angel, which could be a family or additional family members. Sometimes our students have siblings that are not in school, and so we try to cover them at the holidays as well. But there are plenty of opportunities for you to work with us. I think that's it.
Yeah, so just any questions for us?
How do you find what kids are homeless? I mean, do they have to volunteer that information, or is there a way to? I know a lot of stories about people trying to hide that.
Yes, so during enrollment, there are 2 questions on the enrollment, the online enrollment process. One of them is about, are you experiencing a temporary housing situation? So they're kind of masked in the way of, are you homeless, do you need help type of thing? And so through those questions, if they're both answered yes, then I get a report with those and I reach out to those families. And honestly, when I first started doing it, it's a very personal interview because you're asking a lot of questions, about it. And I found like after the first 2 or 3 questions, families were just opening up and saying those things. Yes, some people are not going to be forthright with that, but a lot of our times our counselors will notice that and they'll bring the names to us and then I'll reach out to the parents. Sometimes just talking through students through truancy, like I told you, that was another thing. So it's through conversations and, CISD is big on relationships. And that's our big keystone is like if these students have relationships with someone, they usually have the means to reach out and get us in contact with the family. So anytime someone has a suspicion of it, we act on the suspicion of it. It's not just like, well, we can't prove it. It's not like that because we want to take care of our kids.
And sometimes we have situations where parents are not willing to accept help or sometimes we see it through lunch account information. When their account gets into the negative, then sometimes the director of child nutrition will contact us and say, do you know anything about this situation? So we kind of have a couple of safety nets. We work very closely with our child nutrition department in general. And so we'll investigate. It also helps preserve the relationship of the teacher or the assistant principal or counselor because we're neutral and we're not on campuses. Annalise is a little, with her high schoolers, but we're mobile and we can go to the home, which a lot of times, or the hotel, and we can go to them face to face to talk, and it just makes it a little more comfortable because they also don't, it's such a personal and sensitive topic that we just want to also make sure that we're preserving their dignity as well. Great question.
Yes, I have a question about when the kids are put in a hotel. What if they don't have parents or relatives? You can't just leave a child under 18 in a hotel by themselves. Is there a responsible adult that is there to care for them, or they have to be with a family, or how do you do that?
So sometimes it's a family member and they're renting the hotel, and that parent may be a single parent, it may be 2 parents, and they're staying in a hotel because they don't have anywhere else to go. A lot of times our partner organizations are actually funding those hotels for them or working with them to get them into a more permanent housing situation. Sometimes it's an older sibling that's no longer a minor. We've had several situations where the older sibling has been, 19 or even 18, but out of school and they're caring for younger siblings. And we, of course, ensure to the best of our ability that it's a safe situation. And if we ever, as educators, feel like something is not safe, then we do have the obligation to make a report. And that is also within our department functions. Yes, ma'am.
Jennifer, I have a question, and we're obviously providing for some very basic needs for our children who are homeless or in these situations. What about extracurriculars? Are they involved? Do they need sponsorships? Do they need equipment? Do they need things like, school spirit wear, that everyone wears on Fridays, for example? How does that work?
So for our athletes, we have a lot of our students that are homeless that are athletes, and we ensure that any fees are paid. We work directly with our director of athletics. So our department we're the liaison between other departments. It may be that we don't know of situations until after it's begun and they're one of the students that, they don't have the polo for the Fridays. Football days, they don't have the khakis, and then at that point either the coach or the athletic director contacts us, and then we work on it. We start working on it. But yes, we always and khakis are something that we've really had to get this year. We have a small clothing closet at admin, and we're looking to grow that, and khakis it's a staple in there.
Tickets to games, are those also covered? Honestly, I can't remember what the situation is with
Tickets to games, our students can get in with their student pass
Okay.
if they're there before a certain amount of time.
Okay.
Yes.
Hi, so thank you so much for presenting on this. I think it's so important that we're learning about it. And so I had two questions. So 70, you said there were about 70 students this year. Is that about the average, or what have you seen over the last few years? And then secondly, I work with trafficked teenagers, and I noticed that homelessness makes those teenagers really vulnerable to trafficking. Have you seen any of that in Coppell?
Annalise, do you want to speak to that since you're at the high school?
What was the first part of your question? I got stuck on the trafficking.
Sorry, so it was about 70 students this year.
Yes.
And so in the past few years, is that about the average number? That was my first
Usually
question.
about 40 or 50.
Yeah, so there are more that we've had this year, and that number ebbs and flows as the year goes on. We've had a lot of mobility this year, but yes, this year has been higher, and I think also just the needs, like even as I'm in sticker shock of paying at the gas pumps or buying eggs, these families are in sticker shock, but they can't afford it on top of that. And so I think with the economy the way that it is, that's caused an increase in need. So yes, it's on the rise. Personally, I have not come across any of the children who have involved in trafficking or anything of that sort. We're pretty hands-on with our homeless kids, and there's only one family right now that we can't locate, but they left the state with their mother. It wasn't a report, but we do know where all of our kids are and where they're staying. But that is a high concern because they are very vulnerable and very impressionable, and we want to make sure that they stay out of that circle.
Thank you for your hard work.
There's also human trafficking information and contact lines. So at all of our campuses and our administration buildings, in case someone suspects that something is going on or needs that to be investigated as well.
Jennifer, just making a comment. I was telling my sister-in-law about this meeting today.
Yes.
She lives in Oklahoma City, and she said that she had just read where in Norman, Oklahoma, they had 70 homeless children. And I'm thinking Norman, Oklahoma is a lot larger than us, and they have 70. So you can imagine. We need help, guys.
Yeah. It's so true. We're tiny compared to Norman.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
You said the drop-off donations at the administration building. Could you be more specific? Which one? Where?
Yes, Bonita White, and it's the one on Denton Tap Road. And Rochelle is our receptionist, and she would know exactly where you need to go. She knows that there are 2 to 3 of us in our department at that location, and all you have to do is say that I have supplies for students, and you can say homeless students if you'd like to, and she'll know exactly where to put those.
And one thing I always forget to tell to our people who are doing donations, are so kind and sometimes want to wash the clothes, the students love to have the new tags on there. It makes them feel like they have gotten something shiny and new, and so leave those tags on because they really like that.
Well, and I had one student tell me that it was the first time they've ever had clothes from a store, that they're used to going to garage sales and getting clothes. So that student was just in awe that they had clothes that were new from a store.
Do you want to put the QR code back up?
And we have QR codes at this table as well as some bond information to further support our students. Thank you so much. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted, like, when we make a list of what's needed, when I make the list of what's needed, I put it on the Coppell, Texas private group, the I Love 75019. There's now an I Love CISD. There's a Coppell Allies and Community. There's Coppell Interfaith. So I put it as many places as I can think of. So hopefully, if you're on Facebook, you can find it out there.
And we are so thankful to Interfaith for creating, they've created a winter clothing drive. They helped with school supplies this year as well. And we have different needs and different partners that help with those different needs, along with many individuals that just come through the doors and say, I just feel like I need to give donations, or what can I do? How can I help students? This year we've really tried to focus on our teenagers because we want to make sure that they are having a positive experience, especially coming out of an isolated pandemic. We want to make sure that they are able to socially interact as children do before they're released into the world to be an adult.
So I had one. When you guys first came to our community builder, is this too loud or is it okay?
You're good.
By the way, wait for Usha to get to you with her microphone so everybody can hear the question. So I had no idea there was homelessness in Coppell. It just blew my mind. And that's led to this meeting. So I think as a group here, we'll continue to, as a community, donate gift cards and clothing and those kinds of things. But just as we didn't know about it, I would ask everybody in the room to tell your neighbors about it. Spread the word that we have this problem and you can do something about it. The other thing is that, you mentioned breaking the cycle of poverty. Is there anything being done to maybe do some job skills training or something to help the parents break out of this cycle?
Yes, Metrocrest Services is our partner in that area.
Okay,
yes.
great.
You mentioned McKinney-Vento going back to 2001. I believe President Bush signed that into law, which mandated every school district designate someone to be a homeless liaison. That's you.
That's me.
Okay, now, also that was grant funding that flows from the federal level to the state level down to the local level. Now, of course, that was the application process for obtaining the grant funds. Does Coppell tap into any of those grant funds?
Yes, sir. So we do get federal funding. Ours is minimal because we have a small population. However, most of our funding goes to Victory Place, which is our at-risk students, in order to help with credit recovery and also their education pieces. But that's where a good portion of that funding goes, and then some of it goes to our department for supports as well, for personnel. Great question. I wish we could get more funding.
Thank you, Jennifer. My name is Biju Matthew. We are talking about schools and homelessness among the schools. We also have homelessness in the city of Coppell, and Metrocrest is the organization the city of Coppell works with. I'd like to hear from Elaine about the Metrocrest service to the city of Coppell.
I'm Melanie Meyering. I'm with Metrocrest Services. I'm the Director of Homeless Resources. One of the things that we've been tasked with at Metrocrest, we've been around for over 50 years and have been providing services for rent, providing services with workforce, financial empowerment, and we have a very huge food pantry. We serve about 1,000 families a week with food services. And we get a lot of support from the city of Coppell and individuals in Coppell to do that. As homelessness has increased in all the areas in our city in North Texas, so too has adult homelessness has grown as well. So when you look at students who are experiencing homelessness, what that means is homelessness overall. So what I wanted to start with is what is really homelessness. So if you look at what that is, it's people who are coming from daily instability that have had some kind of crisis in their life and they've gotten toppled because they don't have social supports to support them. So just like the kids who are living in motels and hotels with their family, now you've exacerbated it because there's no one to keep them supported. So Metrocrest was getting requests from the cities, what can you do to help us? Because it's very difficult to see kids who are couch surfing or experiencing homelessness living in motels or hotels unless you know that there's actual bus routes that go and pick them up at hotels. But adult homelessness looks different because you see it. You see people pushing shopping carts with all their stuff in it, or you see them out, maybe they're panhandling for money. So that becomes a different issue because people see it out in the community more. We have a lot of folks that are living in cars that are experiencing homelessness that work, but they can't get, they've gotten, again, they were from daily instability in the first place. There was some kind of crisis, whether it's mental health, substance abuse, or something's happened with a job, and living and working on it in a daily basis for an hourly wage job, and you get sick, you get toppled, you end up in your car, or you end up in a motel, and then you can't get out. So put on top of that what's happened with our economy, and then what's happened with the amount of housing or the lack of housing. So apartment complexes can require that you make 3 times your salary now to rent an apartment. And if your credit is bad, then they can require that you not only, we used to talk about first and last month's rent and then you can get an apartment. Well, there's also a risk fee. So you look at someone who's lost their apartment because they couldn't pay for it. They get into a motel or a car, then they have to make 3 times the rent to get into an apartment, but they may need $3,000 or $4,000 just to have a key. It's not doable. So a lot of these families end up in motels because you don't have to have a deposit to get a motel. So they think, well, I can do this because it's $300 a week. We can do this. So they work and they pay $300 a week if they can find one for that. It's usually $350 or more. Then the next week they owe $350. Well, they can do that for the next week. But then the next week they need another $350. They're not able to save the money to get out of the motel. Now they're trapped. So they're working just to pay for the motel. They can't save any money for the apartment. They're trying to keep their kids in school if they have children. Now what? So I can talk about homelessness forever because it's a huge passion of mine, but let me just keep this as brief as I can. So they end up out on the streets and people see them and they get irritated and they're uncomfortable because people are living out there. Now what do you do with them? There is federal dollars that go down from the Office of the Department of Housing and Urban Development that goes down into what are called continuums of care that go to agencies to provide housing, to get people off the streets. You have to have a federal program to support those families, to get them in. So not all agencies have that. So there's all of these different steps in terms of homelessness that make a difference in what kind of services you can provide. That becomes a whole issue in and of itself. Every year, that Department of Human and Urban Development requires communities to go out and do a count of the number of people experiencing homelessness in their community. So they want a number of people who are literally homeless. That is a designation by the federal government. They want to know how many kids are in school that are experiencing homelessness. They want to know how many people are in motels. That's really more, we want to know that more than the federal government does because they also look at shelters and transitional living. So every year I'm asking for volunteers, will you go out and count? It's called the point in time count. So they're taking a snapshot completely across the country at the same exact time, trying to get the number of people experiencing homelessness so they can get a handle on who's really out there and what can we do to serve them. So this year, and you'll notice that if you look at those slides that 2021 is missing. So what happened in the height of COVID is that all of those numbers got skewed, not just for Metrocrest, but across the country because they didn't have volunteers to count. People are scattered. There's agencies that were doing whatever they could with federal dollars to put people in motels because it was really a crisis. So if you look, we have about 2,000 people in our service area, and we serve Coppell, Addison, Carrollton, and Farmers Branch. We have about 2,000 people living in long-term motels. That includes families, that includes individuals. So I have some volunteers who go out to every one of those hotels that allow long-term stays to get the number of people that they have living there that live there over 30 days. Some of those people have lived there 14 years in a motel with a microwave. Some of them, if they can afford it, will live in budget suites, and there's actually a small kitchenette in that, so they actually have a full-size refrigerator and a little stovetop. So that includes the families, that includes all the individuals, that includes working poor who can't get out of there. And then it's broken down by the cities and what that looks like. If you'll go to the next slide, we'll just do the, so this is the McKinney-Vento kids that the folks from Coppell ISD were talking about. And it looks like Carrollton Farmers Branch really did a lot and dropped the number of kids experiencing homelessness. But the gal who was doing that last year, after we saw these numbers, was giving us an accumulative number. So we said, no. By the federal government, we have to have the number of kids who are experiencing homelessness the day of that point in time count. So you can see that Coppell on that day this year had 61. Last year they had 18. Those all get reported to the federal government. Metrocrest serves some students who live in Carrollton but go to LISD. So that's why you see Louisville Independent School District on there. And then the next slide will show you the number of folks that we found that were living unsheltered. And unsheltered means that they're living in a place that's uninhabitable for human consumption. They're living in cars, they're living in camps, they're living in tents, live underneath bridges. So when you look at these numbers, as those of us who have been working in homelessness for a very long time, you get a number for a snapshot of a day, and you could almost triple it to give you really a realistic idea of what that looks like. Coppell does not seem to be experiencing a lot of homelessness, unsheltered homelessness right now. We have a team of volunteers that do street outreach with us 4 days a week, and we very rarely run across anyone in Coppell that's experiencing homelessness. I think in the last year I've had one call from the library, and I've had one call from the police department because an elderly woman was living in her van outside of the senior center. And eventually a bunch of folks who regularly go to the senior center realized that this woman who was in her 70s was living in her van. We're seeing a lot more elderly people living in their cars because they can't afford to live on their Social Security benefits anymore, and the rent has gone up too high and they can't afford to stay inside. I'm working with a lady right now who's 80 years old in a country that is one of the wealthiest countries on the earth, and she's living outside because she can't afford to stay in a place although she has $1,400 a month that she could use from Social Security, but she got scammed and took out a payday loan, and she's just trying to pay back the payday loan because she's a good steward. And I said, if you stop paying on your payday loan, you could actually be housed. She goes, I took that out. It was a scam, but I took it out. So homelessness is a really divisive issue because people have very intense feelings about that when they see somebody out on the street. They're often very dirty. They are often unkempt. There's a lot of trash around sometimes. There's folks that are having a severe mental health crisis and they're talking to themselves, or people who are using substances. So people have strong feelings about it. You start meeting folks where they are and having conversations, and you realize that those, there for the grace of God go I, right? Because I can't say that I would never become homeless, because we run with about the same kind of people or family members that are about the same level we are. It would take a very long time if my husband and I both lost our jobs. We went through all of the savings that we had, any of our investments, but then I have 4 older siblings and a mom who's still alive that I haven't done anything, or we haven't done anything that would cut those relationships. Thankfully, I mean, that happens in every family, right? It would take years, if at all, for us to become outside experiencing homelessness, but not so for someone else who doesn't have those same those same support systems. It's all about human capital. So when the school folks are talking about giving gift cards or can you help with how do you support a student and their family, when you become part of a community with someone in social capital, you're stabilizing them in ways that other people in their life just cannot simply do. They're estranged or the family's in crisis themselves. You'll see kids that go surfing from one couch to another until that family can't feed them any longer and it's just too hard for them and they have to move on. The same thing happens with adults. So one of the things that we want to do is how can we divert you from a shelter? In Dallas County, there's about 2,000 shelter beds. Last year for the pit count, we don't have the numbers for this year. Last year they had 4,410 people that were experiencing homelessness. Now you know from what I just said that you can almost triple that number to what's really happening outside of homelessness. I don't know about you, and I realize I'm a social worker and have been for a very long time, but even if you took 4,410 people, how are you going to fit them into 2,000 shelter beds if everybody wanted to go? The math doesn't add up. There is one agency that does work with families experiencing homelessness, not domestic violence, just families living in cars, because we see it all the time, especially in the summer. There's no schools feeding kids. Only the people that get signed up do SAC Summer Hunger. So we have families that come in all the time and they're living in cars. It's at 104 out. There's one agency that works with them, and although Ella Magnus runs an amazing program called Family Gateway, they only have so much capacity. So you start looking at what the capacity is for all the people out there with needs, and then it answers itself. So sometimes it isn't because people are bad or wrong or making really bad choices. There is only so much help that you can provide somebody because the needs are so great. And what's happened with COVID and what happened with our economy afterwards has just exacerbated it beyond belief sometimes. So our response to that when Metrocrest hired me was, I said, we need to go out and find these people. We have, luckily, through the McKinney-Vento Act, a way to know about kids and families. But what about all the other people? What about the elderly people? What about the folks that have gotten themselves toppled for whatever reason? And so I started first with the street outreach program. We said, we got to go out and find these people, meet them on the street. What do you need and how can we help you? How do we restore dignity to people who know exactly how people see them? And I hear it all the time. Melanie, I know how people see me. They don't look me in the eye, or they say rude things. They throw a peanut butter and jelly sandwich out at me. He has that different experience, right? I understand why people do that because they don't know what else to do. Or they don't understand that there's a story behind that face that they see on that street corner. Now don't get me wrong, there's only about 25% of people that are panhandling that are actually experiencing homelessness. Some people do it for a job. There's a lot of folks out there that's just how they're buying a chicken sandwich from McDonald's. How do you know that? What do you do with that? I don't give money until I do. But typically, we'll never do that. And I'll know if somebody's doing it for a living because if I try and hand them our calling book that gives you all of the services that are available in Dallas and Collin counties for people experiencing homelessness, and they don't want it, they throw it on the ground. I'm like, you've been out here a long time and you know exactly what that is. The folks that I know that are experiencing homelessness that are waiting on the housing list, it's a different issue. I put a gentleman on the housing list yesterday. There's right now 1,300 people on that list. And they're scrambling to find apartments to put them in. So he may be outside over a year and a half before he ever gets housed. He does not have the mental health capacity to go inside. He has Asperger's. And if you know anyone that lives on the spectrum, going to stay in and if you're in the Salvation Army, a 3-tiered bunk bed, very close with 500 men in a big room isn't going to happen for him. It just simply is not going to happen. But when people see him, he's dirty. If you go talk to him, he smells. He's delightful. But he lives outside underneath the bridge, just waiting to get a home. That we have a problem in our country, and the problem is that there's not one way to solve it. We're constantly working on people for critical documents You can't get a motel room if you don't have an ID. You can't get into a homeless shelter if you don't have an ID. Critical documents are the easiest thing to steal and the hardest thing to get back. Because the last time that you went to go get a state issued ID or a state driver's license, you had to take in documents. You had to take in a birth certificate, you had to take in a social security card, and you had to have a third piece of ID to get it, just to get an appointment. If you're out on the street and you don't have access to a phone, a computer, a car, and you need an ID again, you don't have a birth certificate, how are you going to get to the social security office? You can't call because you can't get through because they don't answer the phone. So most people go down there and sit and say, hey, I couldn't make an appointment. They said, oh, here's one, come back in a month. It just gets compounded. So unwinding all of that, there's not an easy answer. And IDs usually take about $150 to replace because you're getting all the different things. It takes staff time to do it. And I just ordered a birth certificate for someone from VitaDoc and it was $51. I have diversion money for that. I have money for critical documents. I don't have a huge budget, but I'm really fortunate that we can do that for folks here. We want them to move on. We have to support their ability to do it. The other big thing that we've been working on is what's called diversion, and that's an actual federal government program. We've started a diversion program here in Metrocrest service area to divert people from going to a shelter door. Is there some place that you can go or somebody you know that you can stay with for an undetermined amount of time where you will not be experiencing homelessness? They'll say, no, I don't have anybody. We go back and talk to them the next week. Are you sure you could think of somebody? Well, I got a cousin in Amarillo. Would that cousin in Amarillo let you stay with them? Well, I don't know how I'm going to get out there. No, that's not the question. Will that cousin in Amarillo let you stay until you can get yourself back on your feet, get a job? Well, yeah, I think so. Well, let's call them. Let's start a dialogue. I can put you on a bus and send you to Amarillo with a cousin and get you off the streets here. That's what we call diversion. We have a family. A couple months ago, I had a mom with a couple kids living in a motel in Addison. Her kids went to Carrollton Farmers Branch. She was making more money than I do. She's in a motel. She got toppled because her husband, who was supporting for them mostly, ended up in prison with domestic violence situation. And so she was 2 kids, special needs, both on the spectrum. She's paying for Ubers because she doesn't have a car anymore. She's paying for Ubers to get them to school because the kids can't ride a bus. And you heard what they said about getting transportation 3 to 5 days. Well, she had moved around enough in the motels just trying to be able to pay for it. She worked from home, worked from her motel room, but when she had to go in, she had to go over to Westlake. And so she had to pay for an Uber to get to Westlake to do her job. And then her kids will only eat certain foods because, again, you heard they're on the spectrum. So when I tried to deliver food to her from our food pantry, she said, I really appreciate this, but I can't use this, I can't use this, I can't use this, because she's in a motel room, so she can't cook fully. She had like a hot plate, but those kids can't eat or won't eat all of those foods. And not because they're spoiled, but they have a mental condition that says, developmental disability, it says that this is a thing for them, they won't use it. So she was using all of her money to buy certain foods that they could eat. So she was paying the motel room, but then she's stuck. It took about $1,400 to get her out of the motel, get her into an apartment that she found that would accept her income. To me, that's a good use of $1,400. You're out of a motel, you're back in an apartment, you can pay for how you live. Then you can set up bus transportation to get her to school. I look at them, that's not one of their families, but it's the same thing that they're talking about. So the kids can get to the school where they need to go, but you have to find them and then you have to start those conversations. And there's a lot of people that would just look at her and say, what are you doing? What kind of decision did you make that you ended up here in the first place? Well, all of her social supports got toppled when the husband went to prison. So I can talk to you about homelessness all day long. It's a huge passion of mine. I've worked with adolescent homelessness and human trafficking and poverty for a very long time, and there just isn't one answer to it. So what are we trying to do? The last thing that, and I'll be quiet because I know we have other folks here, is that people living in cars have a really difficult time working when they smell. And if you don't have enough money or creative enough to, you can go to any of the gyms, but you have to have a gym membership. You can go to any of the rec centers, but you have to have a membership. They're just not going to let you walk in and use the shower. So a couple of months ago, I contacted Lance Olinsky, whose entire ministry is street side showers. And he has mobile showers, you know, he takes all over the Metroplex in certain places. So they're at one stop on a certain day every week, so there's consistency for folks. And we just got that started in February. They come to North Dallas Family Church every Friday at 10 o'clock, and they can shower, offer showers for about 35 people. Clean underwear, clean clothes. What I'm looking for is meals to feed the people that come, to give them a meal, using that as an opportunity to do some case management with them. And so they need volunteers for that. I'm hoping to do food, and I'm hoping also that we can use that as an opportunity to just really love on the people in our community, which is all this, because I have people now that are coming down from Louisville to get a shower. We have a beautiful workforce program, but the first thing the workforce program asks the manager of workforce, when it's any of the clients that I'm having her work with, is how are they going to shower? Because they can't have them in their businesses if they smell. So again, it's like, well, I would go to work, I could do that, but I don't have any clean clothes. And so I'm hoping that we can add laundry services to that at some point, to give people dignity first and foremost. And dignity, with dignity comes hope, right? And then let's do some of those things that are very small for us as people who come from daily stability, to support them so they can get back on their feet and get going. Because there's a lot of really capable people out there that have gotten toppled and they can't get back. There's a lot of folks in this room and in this community that have access to knowledge and access to different programs that can help them move forward, that doesn't necessarily cost us money. So I could talk to you forever, but we have two other beautiful people down here that.
Okay. My name is Leah Cross, and I'm with Assistance League of Coppell. I'm currently the president of the organization, and we have some other members over here on the front row, so if anybody has questions for us, since the time is the way it is, if you want to talk to us afterwards, we'd be happy to entertain those. But I'm here to share how our organization provides help for homelessness and economically disadvantaged youth in the Coppell community. Assistance League of Coppell was established in 1999, and we ran into so many people throughout. In fact, I ran into one man today who said, "I've never heard of you before." So we've been here a long time. We're an all-volunteer group of local residents. We currently have both adult chapter with 35 members, and 4 years ago we established the Assist Teams, which is a youth auxiliary for grades 7 to 12, recognizing that there were need for a volunteer opportunity for those kids, and they have 44 members. While our local chapter is over 20 years old, the roots of our organization nationally go back over 100 years to California, when our founders were assisting economically disadvantaged families and those made homeless by the 1906 San Francisco earthquake. So there are currently over 120 chapters across the U.S. and cities nationwide. Our chapter's objective is to have programs which benefit both the youth and the senior citizens, specifically in the Coppell community. So 100% of our program expenditures are used locally. Our area of coverage includes the city of Coppell and those communities served by Coppell ISD, such as Valley Ranch, and Jennifer named specifically others. Since our organization is focused on the local needs, our services are locally designed, organized, and carried out to fit those needs. We operate solely on local donations, which include fundraisers where we sell Christmas ornaments of different scenes around the city, raffles and such. And we also get grants requested from businesses in the city of Coppell, and we have individual donations. Our reason for existing is noted in our vision: essential needs are met in our community and families flourish. We have a little brochure over on the table over here which provides more information through our URL link that'll get you to our website for both Assistance League of Coppell and our Assistines organization. It's hard to believe that our community does have homeless families. We were in shock when we first found this out after talking with Jennifer. Jennifer is our major connection to how we find these children of need. The program not only exists, but it's growing due to the issues such as job loss, aging out of foster care, inflation, housing, for housing, food, and basic supplies that you've already heard. But our primary program assists the homeless as known as Operation School Bell, which is focused on local school-age children. Through this program, we provided over $350,000 in direct assistance to economically disadvantaged youth in the Coppell area. For example, we provide full sets of new clothing, shirts, shorts, pants, shoes, socks, and don't forget underwear, coats and backpacks to these children. We either supply specific items, or occasionally for the older youth, we give them gift cards to help with clothing and to shoe stores. In addition, we've also provided essential supplies such as toiletries and school snacks. We provide CISD staff with gift cards for distribution to students to purchase food and essential supplies. Sometimes I think they've been used for gas just to get someone to work. We understand they're primarily provided to those homeless kids and their families. In the case of the homeless, these gift cards are critical to acquire food or maybe even diapers, who knows. But one thing that we heard also, as kind of mentioned here with Metrocrest, they don't have refrigerators where they're living, and so sometimes they are purchasing coolers just to store food to keep them cold. Our objective is to give these children a sense of normalcy, dignity, and inclusion in their school environment. So each CISD school has an Assistance League member that's assigned to help in coordinating support for these students, identified by either the school counselors or nurses. And we have an ongoing contact with these CISD students through the CISD Student Staff Services Organization, which is Jennifer. These groups provide a critical link between our organization and the students needing our assistance by assessing and communicating which items are needed. And this relationship allows us to serve those in need that are needing the most assistance while maintaining privacy of the family members. And just to let you know, we do not meet these kids. We take the items to the school, hand them off to the counselor's office or the nurse's office, then they are given to the kids to take home with them. So where we would like to see those faces, those smiling faces, we also are very much respectful of their privacy. We also partner with other local organizations such as Coppell Cares to exchange information on community needs, to organize and pack and deliver boxes for food for students who don't have their reliable food source, especially during weekends in the summer months. And this food support is very important because the students typically have free or reduced lunches throughout the school year. But this food source is not available when school's not in session. So another benefit of coordinating support with other service organizations is that we can be made aware of students' needs, like clothing assistance, because we will hear from Coppell Cares occasionally about students who need clothing, and that's not something they provide. And we have that expertise in helping to get that done. So to summarize, The Assistance League of Coppell is here to address the needs of the local economically disadvantaged children, including the homeless, in order to help them thrive in the school environment and make them successful. Thank you.
Hello everybody, my name is Deanna. I'm with the Christian Community Action here in Louisville. I am a case manager. Just to tell you guys a little bit about me, I'm originally from Argentina, and I previously worked at LifePath as a mental health responder, and then I worked at Friends of the Family with domestic violence. So I worked at the shelter, and I have a lot of experience kind of helping people get back on their feet, especially whenever they are at the shelter. They are technically homeless and they have to start from scratch. So I've been at CCA for about a month now. I'm very new, but I have a lot of experience. So to tell you guys a little bit about what we do and who we are, we originally started through a Bible study of 8 people. And through that Bible study in 1973, we have grown, and we help so many different ISDs. We go by ISD for who we help. So we help Argyle, Lake Dallas, Coppell, Frisco, Little Elm, Louisville, Northwest, Carrollton, Farmers Branch if it's in the Denton County District. We also have classes, which I'll touch on later, that are not limited to the district, so anybody can come from anywhere to attend those classes for free. So I'll start with the rescue services we have. We basically have 3 different categories in which we help people. We help people with rescue, which would be people that are in an immediate crisis, needing help with housing and things like that. We like to start kind of like with the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We want to make sure that their basic needs are taken care of and then work our way up to help them meet their goals and give them all the tools they need to achieve those goals. So some of the services that we offer are a client choice food pantry. So the families come in and they have their own cart and they get to pick what they want out of, it's like a little mini grocery store that we have. So that's something that they come in once a week to do. We have homelessness prevention and rapid rehousing programs. We work with United Way, so that process would be coming in to do an assessment, and then eventually you would, if you were approved and everything, you would find the apartment that works good for you or the house. And then we can pay up to 12 months. And we do check in with them to make sure that they still qualify for that. And then of course we have emergency assistance, whether it be helping with childcare, we have gas cards for transportation, we have rental assistance, utility assistance, and things like that. We also have another category, which would be relief. So kind of how they mentioned earlier, during the school year, the kids have, they eat free for lunch, or some of the kids do. And we really want to take some of those responsibilities off the parents whenever during the summertime when they just have a lot more that they have to take on. So some of the things would be like helping them with lunches throughout the summertime for the kids that do get those programs throughout the school year. Helping them with Christmas presents, so a lot of donations, and then we also provide the parents with like wrapping paper and cards so they can do it themselves and make it really special for them. We also have a Golden Angels program for our elderly population. They meet once a week. They do different things, so sometimes they just have coffee and chit chat, or other times, you know, they decide to partake in like Bible study, whatever works best for them. And then we do have back to school too, where we help with school supplies and backpacks and things like that. Donations are always welcome, of course. Looks like for Kids Eat Free, we had almost 40,000 meals across 12 sites, with 6 of those being in Louisville. For the Golden Angels, we have over 100 participating in shopping with the weekly program. And then it looks like last year we helped 1,571 children through the Christmas program. And then the last category that we have, which would be like the top of the hierarchy, which is kind of my niche, would be the restorative services. So that's kind of where I come into play. We have a plethora of classes, and some of them we have up and running right now, like the English class. We have a very high participation rate, and we have it available in the evenings as well. We also have computer classes, and then eventually in the fall we'll be opening up classes for like job readiness, having workshops and job fairs, helping them with their GED or trying to get back to school, helping them kind of assess and identify what their strengths are and how they can apply that to beyond, just meeting their basic needs. We also, because we are faith-based, we do provide pastoral care, and we partner with many community churches in the area. We also have individual counseling as well, and I think that covers, and a financial literacy class as well, so talking about things that they just don't teach you in school, like credit scores or how to apply for taxes, just like things that everybody could benefit from. So, like I said before, for the classes, that's free to everybody, but for some of the financial services, it's a little bit more limited by the districts I mentioned earlier. For the eligibility process, we would just need proof of residency. They would have to be 18 or older, proof of crisis, income verification, and then a willingness to better their situation. So we really want to help people that are in a place where they want to be helped, and we really pride ourselves on we're a hand up, not a handout. So I think the rest of it was like visuals, but I do have cards over there with my name on them, like business cards. Feel free to take as many as you'd like. We are very resourceful at CCA, so even if it's not a service that we personally can't help with, I can almost always get them in touch with the right people, and some of them probably being at this table. So I know I'll try to keep it brief, so if you guys do have any questions, feel free to email me or call me. I work Monday to Friday, and I stay late on Wednesdays for the class. So, yeah.
Great, thank you very much. I wanted to see if Amanda wanted to address the bond.
She muted it. You'll have to. Sorry.
Can you hear me? Okay, there we go. Hi, my name is Amanda Simpson. I am Director of Communications for Coppell ISD. I just want to let you know we have some information about the district over here, including our upcoming bond election. I also wanted to pass along apologies from our superintendent, Dr. Brad Hunt. He would have been here today, but he is also a parent of a graduating senior who is on her last leg of some dance competitions. Otherwise he would have been here, so I was here in his place. But I'll be over there, and we'll be over there to answer any questions. And I just want to thank everybody on this table for what they do for Coppell ISD students. I always say I have 13,456 out of yesterday students that we're responsible for. A few of them are in the room, 2 of whom live with me, but we all work together to make sure that all of our students are taken care of. So thank you.
Great. Thank you very much for coming. If you guys don't have any questions, then please feel free to look at the tables. Or do you have questions? Okay. All right, thank you very much for coming. This is the kind of program we love to do here at the library, and thank you very much to the panelists and to all of you.